I want to thank you all for being here this morning. Our next speaker, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker. We looked high and low for this speaker, and lo and behold, we found her right here in our midst. Ruth Young is, as you know, has been with the Council on Aging for 14 years. She is a graduate of Mount Holyoke and the Simmons School of Social Work. She has had a long career in this field and worked at Mass General and Spalding, and really has done an excellent job of being an advocate for seniors with the Council on Aging. So it is my very big honor to introduce Ruth Young.
Thank you, Helen. I want to be sure that all of you have a handout. Do you? Found them on the chairs. If you don't have a handout, just raise your hand right now, and Elaine is coming around with them. I think we're all set. This is a first for me. I've been here 14 years, and my public speaking at the Jenks has been limited to introductions, not to presentations. However, the symposium committee cornered me as they heard me hemming and hawing about patient rights and said, "You do the talk." It's been a good lesson for me in keeping my mouth closed. However, let's go on to advocacy and what it is. I Googled advocacy and I found 62 definitions. Now, most of them boil down to the same thing. So the one I chose for today is advocacy is supporting a cause with utmost compassion, and you and your healthcare are that cause. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean that you have to advocate? It means that you must make yourself heard and understood. It means you want to understand what is being said to you, and it means you want to be part of the decision-making process if action needs to be taken. If you are able to do these things, you're definitely going to feel more in control of your health care. So specifically, what do you want to know when you get into a doctor's office? Well, first of all, you want to know if you're okay. And if not, you want to know what the problem is. And if the doctor says you have arteriosclerosis, you want to know what that is. You want it explained in everyday language. How did you get it, and what is it doing to you? And then you want to know what can be done about it. What are the doctor's recommendations, and how will they affect you, good or bad? Maybe it's just medication, or maybe it's a procedure. And if it is a procedure, you want him to walk you through it and tell you what to expect afterwards. Now, I'm sure there's some of you in the audience today who are saying to yourself, well, that's the end of this lecture, I don't need it. And what you mean by that is there are literally a whole lot of you, I know because I've talked to you, who don't want to know anything. They don't want to go to a doctor. They don't want to hear what's wrong with them. Now, I think what they're hoping is if they have a problem, it will go away. And you know, some problems do go away. Serious problems don't. And if you suspect a serious problem and you don't get any help, then ultimately you will find you can't avoid it. You can't avoid knowing about it. Because in a month, 6 months, a year, your symptoms will get worse, and probably at a time when you have less of a chance to have a good outcome. Now, there are others of you who say, don't tell me anything, just take care of it. And that is fine. But you don't have any control when you leave everything in someone else's hands, and you may come to question the wisdom of that. Now, for the rest of you who want to understand your health, but you feel you turn into jelly every time you walk into the doctor's office, here are some steps to help you. First of all, get a pad of paper and pencil. Write down every question and problem you have and take it with you for answers. Take a tape recorder and ask for permission to use it. Write down everything they tell you, and it will be there when you forget it. Now, if you don't think you can do that, if you're one of these people who get into the office and your hands shake, besides feeling like jelly, then bring a surrogate with you. Let them ask the questions and write the notes. And you are not a wimp if you do this. It is a very practical solution. Now, this person has become your advocate. You need him. It can be a family member, husband, child, brother, sister, a friend, someone you trust, and hopefully, of course, someone who can write. Give them a pad of paper and let them get the information. Now, an advocate is not only collecting this information for you, they are sharing your health problems with you. They are speaking up for you, and this can be a real comfort in the days to come because you are not alone. And if you have any doubts about everything that you're asking in the doctor's office, if you have any right to take up his time this way, I want you to know that you have every right. These are your rights, and you know they are written in Medicare regulations, which I will share with you a little later. But first I want to move to hospitalization and your right and need for advocacy there. I'd like you to indulge me a bit if I go into a little bit of history, because hospitals have changed so radically from what we knew when we were younger that I think it helps us understand better if we knew how we got there. Why do we have drive-through deliveries? Our hospital stay is no longer than 3 days. Why do we feel we're introduced to the front door and then introduced to the back door? Well, the answer to this is in the cost mechanism. And I shall only explain Medicare, but the private insurers for younger people have adopted similar payment systems, and that is why younger people don't stay long in hospitals either. Now, the modern hospital developed in the 1920s. Prior to that, medicine had not become so specialized that it couldn't be delivered at home. Wealthy people paid the doctor, and he came and took out the appendix or whatever had to be done in the home. Nothing too complicated, though. Hospitals were for poor people who did not have the supports at home. Most of them were charity cases. But by the 1920s, medicine had become so sophisticated that all income groups began to go to hospitals. Physicians had bills, hospitals had bills, and you knew what you had to pay. And you could even negotiate with the doctor or with the hospital. In the 30s, because of the Depression, hospital admissions began to fall off. So in the 30s, the American Hospital Association and its state associations came up with the idea that people should be able to buy insurance to protect them from illness. And with that came the beginning of the blues, known as Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And as luck would have it, businesses decided that they would offer health care as a benefit in the hope that this would keep them competitive with other businesses. And it was very inexpensive. If only they had had a crystal ball. Now this became a bonanza for hospitals. Over time they began to find more and more things to charge for. Insurances paid the bill without question and passed along costs to businesses in the form of premiums. The aftermath of World War II also provided a bonanza. Doctors returning from war had many skills, and this is a probably the only good thing about war, is that it sharpens medical skills. Our hospitals were seen as backwaters. Congress stepped in and passed the Hill-Burton Act, which supplied funds for building, expansion, and updates, and a lot of costs were generated by this expansion and passed on to insurances and then to businesses. Now we move into 1965 and the passage of Medicare. The government knew that costs were out of control already, and now they were going to insure a population that was very vulnerable and expensive and could be kept in the hospital for weeks. So they defined what acute care was, and they said they would only pay for that. They would not pay for social admissions or nursing home care. Now, if you wonder what a social admission was, you know it's the fellow who went to some Boston Common, and the police pick him up when he has frostbite and pneumonia. And in those days, they'd take him down to the hill to the Mass General would make him better, and they couldn't discharge him. He had no place to go, and it was still snowing. So he would end up sort of wintering at the Mass General before he went back to summer on the Boston Common. Expensive proposition. Medicare wanted none of that. So they did. They defined acute care. And they said that hospitals could could keep them as long as they wanted. But once the acute care phase had ended, they would pay the hospitals no longer. So they also set up utilization review boards. And these were Medicare reviewers who went through the hospital reviewing patients, and they said, this one is no longer acute care, and they would issue a notice to the hospital and to the patients and so forth. And the hospital knew that then the gravy train was over. Also, what we saw developed by Medicare was extended care facilities. They knew just lots of us just couldn't go in for surgery and pop up and go home. that we needed maybe skilled nursing care, we needed some PT, we needed some OT, and while that wasn't an acute service, they knew we needed it. And so they provided this 100-day SNF days. You all have them. You know what they are? No. Okay. When your acute phase is over in the hospital and you need PT, or you need OT, or you need skilled nursing, Medicare will pay 100 days for you to go to an extended care facility and get those services. They may not pay for all the 100 days if you progressed enough to go home and you don't need it any longer. But this sort of took some of the edge off of you. We're not going to pay the hospitals any longer after the acute series is over. You can transfer them someplace and they can get the rest of their care. Well, what happened? Hospitals piled on as many bills as they possibly could within this window of acute care. And by the 80s, costs were spiraling out of control. So in the 80s, Medicare moved into another payment system, very important, because this is the one we have today. And it is called DRGs. Have you ever heard of that? Some of you have. Okay. DRGs stands for Diagnostic Related Groupings. And it is what is known as a prospective payment system. And this is how it works. These groupings are patient classification systems. They contain the patient's diagnosis and other relevant factors such as age, sex, other illnesses, etc. So rather than pay hospitals according to the charges the hospital submitted, they pay them a predetermined rate based on the patient's DRG. Now let me give you an example. And let's say we have Mrs. Jones here, she's 75 years old, she needs a new hip. And basically she's in good care. But she lives in the Boston area, and that means everything is higher than some other part of the country. Well, Medicare has a DRG for her. And they know that she will need, let's say, 5 days in the hospital. Now, I could be wrong on that. This is just made up. Okay, I have a doctor out there who knows what this is true or not. But let's say they need 5 days in the hospital. And then they're going to need some blood tests and some x-rays and so forth. And so Medicare says, we are going to pay you $4,000 for Mrs. Jones's hip.
Yep.
You can keep her as long as you want. You can run as many tests on her as you want, but it's your bill. You're not going to get any more than $4,000. Now, what does that do? Cut your care, someone said. Well, the hospital, if they really want to make more profits, has to discharge you in 3 or 4 days. That's profit because they're getting paid for 5. They may cut out some of these procedures. Who needs them anyway? That's more profit. Now, in most cases, this kind of reimbursement should not hurt you, particularly when after 3 days you can go to an extended care facility. The 3-day hospital stay is very important so that you can have that extended care paid by Medicare. Now, let us remember that you as a patient in the doctor's office are quite different from what you are in the hospital. In the hospital, you are sick. You may be in pain. You certainly may be confused by meds that don't wear off immediately. And this is not your most enlightened moment, and you may have no interest in knowing what's happening. This is the most important reason to have an advocate, probably the same one who went with you to the doctor's office. They should look in on you every day and find out what is happening. They don't have to spend all day there, an hour or two. Let's talk to everybody. How's she doing? What's the plan? Et cetera, et cetera. Because it is possible for things to go wrong. And you will need an advocate to get the kind of help you need. Now, I want to give you some examples of some of the things that can go wrong. 2 examples. There's a practice going on in hospitals across the country. I've known about it for about 1.5 years. Just recently, AARP, and I think it was their October issue, maybe in the September one, they wrote up what is called observational beds. Now, some elders are entering the hospital, and they may be assigned a hospital bed in the emergency room or up on the floor. They may be assigned a bed on an acute floor. They may be in a bed next to somebody who's had surgery too. They are acute patients. But they find out later that their bed was classified as an observational bed. They have never been admitted by a physician to the acute bed. An observational bed is classified by Medicare as outpatient. You may well be an acute patient, but you are classified as observation. Now, why is this going on? You can imagine, there's always money behind it. The acute hospitals in this country are having a little argument with Medicare about acute fees, about the DRGs. And so one of the things that they are doing is assigning people to outpatient beds so they can file for outpatient payments. Now, I don't know who's right or wrong in this fight, but I do know who gets squeezed, and you are the one who gets squeezed. You may receive bills that you did not anticipate, but worst of all, you can't go to rehab. You are in an outpatient bed, and when you go to be transferred to an extended care facility for rehab, Medicare says, no, you haven't had 3 days in the acute bed. And so people, Beverly was telling me about this, arrive at Salters, and they have no benefits.
Thank you very much.
Right? Right. It's happening all over the place. Mm.
and $1,000.
To be in that rehab if they want that. Right. Now, what do? Quick question?
That happened to me.
Oh, it did?
Yes.
Oh,
And I'm going to the Attorney General if it happens again. I'm not stopping. I was in the emergency room, and first they said that they would put me in observation. Then the doctor came back after they did some tests. He said, no, we're going to admit you for the following reasons. So I got admitted. That I thought, doctor wrote an order. After I got home, I discovered that they had changed that. Now, we called the insurance company. I made an informed consent to be admitted. I could have said, gee, the way my insurance is, my daughter lives close, I'll go to her place. I could have made that choice. They didn't give me that choice, and I called 7 times. I called Blue Cross, and they said, oh, the hospital did it. I called the hospital, and they said, Blue Cross did it. And she said, I didn't meet the criteria for admission. And I asked, what is the criteria? And she didn't know. I couldn't get anybody to tell me. I was ready to call the president of the hospital. I was so mad.
And he said it.
And, well, I'm going to the Attorney General if that happens again. And I'm going to summon the case manager to my room to get the
Okay.
status.
in your handout, don't read it now, but on the first page is an alert that comes from Medicare about this practice. And you should read it because you want to keep it in your mind, and you should know what some of the steps are that you can take. However, if you are a conscious patient, I would ask every day you went into that you're in that hospital, what kind of bed you are in. Because you can be placed in the observational bed, you can be put into the acute bed, and then it can be reclassified as observational. This has happened. I'm glad you could tell us about it. You need first to go to your doctor and say, do you know what's happening to me? I need these services afterwards. Would you please reclassify me? Sometimes the doctor doesn't even know. But the people who have done this are the hospital. Okay? It's not Blue Cross, it's not Medicare, it's the hospital. If you can't wake up and you don't think about these things after surgery, do you? You just want to sleep. That's when you need your advocate. You have to have someone these days who is your advocate, who will come in and say at the nurse's station, what kind of bed is my friend in? And if they don't tell you, she should be able to go wherever she wants to the admitting office, to the CEO, and find out. And if she can't get you out of an observational bed into an acute bed, she should appeal to the Mass Pro. Now, have any of you ever heard of the Mass Pro? I had a feeling, yeah, you have. She's our Shine Counselor. She knows about the Mass Pro. I'm going to tell you in a couple of minutes about the Mass Pro, but first of all, I want to give you one more example of something that can go wrong. A woman came to see me just a few years ago, and her friends had sent her to the Council on Aging because they knew we'd know about extended care facilities and what was good and what wasn't, or whatever. Not that we say that to people, but that's what they're looking for. And this lady's husband was going to an extended care facility the next day, and she wanted to know what I thought about it. And I said, tell me a little bit about your husband. And she said, well, my husband is unconscious. He was admitted to the hospital unconscious. He's been in there 3 days, and now they're discharging him tomorrow to rehab. Well, I don't have to tell you what's wrong with this. Once he gets into that extended care facility, the PT and the OT, the nurse, are all going to arrive at his bed to do an assessment. And guess what? He can't participate. Can't wake up. He can't participate. And they write in the medical chart, patient cannot participate. And following them to the medical chart is the Medicare reviewer. Can't participate. He's not a Medicare patient. This is a disqualified admission. And the next thing that happens is the business office comes after the wife and says, you owe so much money for the amount of time he's been here, and then for however long, he stays. Until you find another plan that decides to leave him here, or until you will spend all your money and you go on Medicaid. Well, when she heard all this, she said, oh God, no. And so I said, first of all, I feel your rights have been violated. They are violated because you are this patient's advocate and wife. And you have a right to know. She had asked what the problem was. Nobody would tell her what the problem was. No one would tell her what the treatment plan is, and no one would tell her why they made this discharge plan. And I told her how to appeal this to the Mass Pro. And I said, but first of all, go back to that hospital and tell that doctor and tell that case manager that this is what you know is wrong. This should not be going on. And if they cannot help you, you are going to the Mass Pro. What happened is they had a conference with her. They explained all his medical conditions. They kept him until he was conscious, and then they made a decent discharge plan for him. Advocating is terribly important, and knowing the facts are terribly important. Now, Medicare knew this was tricky business. They knew that these abbreviated stays and these quick discharges could be problems. And so what they did is they included in their regulations what's called conditions of participation. Have you ever heard of them? No, okay. There are 62 of them. You only need to know about 2. Okay, just 2. Okay. The 2 that you need to know about are patient rights and discharge planning. Now those patient rights are in your handout. We have been talking about 3 out of 11 patient rights today. And these are the 3 that we've been talking about. You have the right to full information about your condition, and that goes for your advocate. You have the right to participate in treatment decisions and discharge. And you have the right to file complaints and appeals. If you cannot exercise your rights because you are sick, make sure your advocate is there for you. And one of the things you can do is to sign a release, giving this person permission to get the information they need. Now, permission form is in this handout too. It's a Medicare permission form. It's not a healthcare proxy. Dr. Collins will be telling you more about a healthcare proxy, but that's basically for people who aren't able to act on their own behalf, and they need someone to act. This form is for people who know what's going on, but they just don't have the strength to do anything, and they're appointing their husband or whomever to start an appeal process. The other thing, condition of participation is discharge planning. And discharge, as I'm sure you know, can happen very, very quickly. Not everybody needs a discharge plan. However, if your health or functioning is compromised upon discharge, you need a plan. You or your advocate or any one of your caregivers can ask for it. The hospital must have a staff to perform it. This staff is usually called case management. The discharge evaluation must include an evaluation of what the patient is like now, what the patient will need in order to function after discharge, and where he can receive this help. You must agree to the plan, and then the hospital must make the initial contact with community resources. Now, as I've said many times before, look in your handout when you go home. I have 2 pages that Medicare has written in the conditions of participation on what needs to be done for discharge. You may find someday that you're lacking what you need, and it's in there. Now what I want to do is to discuss appeals. This is one of your most potent rights, is to be able to appeal And if you look at these 11 rights, anything that goes wrong there, you can appeal. It's your right. First, I would begin my appeal with the hospital. They don't want to have a lot of trouble. Sometimes you have over-ambitious case managers who are trying to shorten their length of stay records and out you go or whatever. However, if the facts come to life as they did for the lady that I described to you, the hospital may come around and rectify things. Now, what do you do, though, if they don't? Let's say you have talked to the hospital and they disagree with you. You think the patient is sick, much sicker than he should be if he's going to be discharged. You don't like the place that he's being discharged to. You have seen it. It doesn't look as though they have the facilities to meet his needs. You don't want him to go there. And the hospital says, sorry, we disagree with you. What do you do then? So then you can appeal to the Mass Pro. That's spelled capital M-A-S-S, capital P-R-O. It's all in here, so you don't have to write anything down. They are the advocacy arm for Medicare in Massachusetts, and very little is known about them. They are known as the Medicare Quality Improvement Organization for Massachusetts. You can appeal quality of care, discharge planning, billing, anything you choose, and they do have to respond. Now, in your packet is the address and telephone number of the Mass Pro and instructions on how to file an appeal. If you feel a discharge is premature, you want to contact them immediately. You don't want the patient on the doorstep while you're calling. They have to respond. Other kinds of questions and concerns you have, they can take 30 days, or you can take 30 days to appeal. But with a discharge, it's an imminent thing, so they have to respond. Their job is to come to a resolution with you and the hospital as quickly as possible. Now, if you think there may be legal issues involved, and some people are very, very worried about legal issues because the hospitals have said, well, you go ahead and appeal this, and you have to pay for every extra day that your patient is in here. Not sure that's so accurate, but if you feel that you're up against something that needs legal interpretation, you are entitled to free legal care through the Mass Medicare Advocacy Project. Now, their number is also in your package. You can't go to see them about your trusts or wills. They're just there for Medicare problems. They're free. I want to also remind you the Council on Aging is here and available to help you understand your rights. And we also have on board our Shine Counselor, who is knowledgeable about all of the Medicare benefits. And I just want to say, use us if you need us. In addition, there is a list of resources in the back of your packet, which you may find helpful. Now, what I want to say is you have plenty of rights to handle your problems if you know what those rights are. If you're ignorant of them, you can't use them. If you know what they are, but you can't exercise them because of your physical situation, they're also useless. They are not useless if you have an advocate who understands them and who can speak for you. Having an advocate may be a new idea to you, but it is an essential concept in today's medical world. As individuals, we all feel that we can be done in by big government, big business, big healthcare, big anything. But with healthcare, with Medicare, you have been given a set of tools to deal with any problems that arise. Use them when you need them, and you will not be at such a disadvantage, and you will feel that you have more control. Thank you. I don't see, are there any, oh yes, there's one question over here. You have an out-of-state plan, or you are out-of-state. Well, I'll tell you, this equivalent of the Mass Pro is all over the country because Medicare has so deemed it to be necessary. You can have two different kinds of Medicare, and correct me, Ann Redmond, Shine Counselor, if I am wrong. But you have standard medical care in which you buy a gap. And then you have Medicare that you purchase through an insurance company. It's run like an HMO. That would be Tufts and so forth and so on. If you are on the latter, then you want to take your appeal first to them, okay? And then if that fails, go to the Mass Pro. Oh, it's a good question. It's a good question. And it's written about in these papers that you have. Yes.
Why can't we find out that there's been medical negligence?
You can go to the Mass Pro too. You can go to a lawyer. Okay? Yes.
How do you handle this if you are unconscious or not able to use the message?
You can't. You can't. You're literally not able to. Well, oh, she's saying, what if you have no family, no advocate, and you're unconscious? Hospitals will do a number of different things. Sometimes they'll just take care of you and ship you off, whatever. And other times they will go to court to get a guardian for you. However, I think we all ought to think now, when we're healthy and running around, who is there in our life that we would want to be there if we were sick? Who would we want to give permission to speak up for us? Who's the bossiest friend you have? She'll go to that nursing desk. I mean, really, you have to be assertive because people look at you like you have no right, but you have rights. Carry them with you. I have my rights. Anyway. Excuse me, I didn't hear you, Beverly. Oh, bossy children are wonderful. Marsha, you had a question? I'll repeat it, yes.
I wanted to ask if it's appropriate for a person who doesn't have anybody to advocate.
Oh, of course it is. She wanted to know if someone had just nobody, if it's appropriate to speak to Elaine. Where's Elaine? Elaine, raise your hand and stand up. Come on. This is Elaine Smith, and she is the Council on Aging nurse. And we don't want to promote her as everybody's advocate because she don't have to do anything else. But certain situations have come across our doorstep here in recent days when Helene has been in the hospitals advocating and in the home advocating with agencies outside. And it's worked very nicely, hasn't it, Elaine?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's all worked out well.
yeah. And so we want to be here to help you. All I can say is we can't take on the world. Well, thank you very much. You've been a great audience.